Welcome to the Story Fulfilled podcast, where we deep dive into how each character and story in the Bible come together to fulfill the story of God. I'm Jay.
I'm Fletcher.
And I'm Abby.
And today's story is about Herod the Great.
Bum, 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 bum.
Bum, 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 bum.
Yes, we've made note in this podcast before about great people, especially great people who have called themselves great, and thus...
This is one of them.
Yeah, Herod, great.
Also, we want to differentiate him from Herod, the 6 other Herods that are in the New Testament, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's who we're talking about today.
Yeah. And as always, we have a question, because we like to do questions around here. And Herod hosted the Magi for dinner.
Ooh.
They were looking for the Messiah, and he said, "Hey guys, let's have some supper together." So
Let's
the question,
talk.
let's have a little chit chat. If you could serve any meal to the Magi, let's say you had the Magi for dinner, and you could serve them any meal, what would you make for them?
Let's
like
all
Abby-
choose what meal another person would make, because
Yeah.
I think Abby would make some sort of vegetable medley.
I was going to say
Nope.
couscous.
Or soup.
Nope, I actually have something very specific in mind. You both are wrong.
Okay.
Chili with barbecue sauce.
Oh
No,
my
she's
gosh,
not making
gross.
anything with meat in it.
No.
No, vegetable chili.
But yeah, because
You know
that's great.
You know what? I was just before we started recording this, I've really been loving these private chef videos for like celebrities on Instagram. They're really satisfying to watch. And one of the chefs that I was watching, she made a pad thai. And it looked really good. So I think right now I would make pad thai. Except
Okay.
I would probably order it from my favorite pad thai place in Barrie because
Chow paya pad thai.
Chow paya.
Still gotta go. Still
It's
gotta
really
try
good.
That.
Because I don't know how to make pad thai. So that's what I would do right now.
Well, that's when you pull up the recipe, Abby. You Google one of
Listen,
those chefs. And
I'm not like you two. I don't
Yeah.
really enjoy cooking. I cook to eat.
I
It's
cook
a
to eat
necessity.
too, but
Yeah.
I like to taste it.
Well, there you go.
No, I'm going to
Right.
go with what I made today, which was pork belly. Except the pork belly that I had today didn't have skin on it, and I was quite disappointed when I made it. But
Okay.
I feel like
pork
you
belly
eat,
with crispy skin.
Do you eat
Nice.
a lot of pork belly? I feel
No,
like
I just
hear
bring
you
it. It's a rare thing that I make, so every time I make it, I usually talk about it.
Oh,
I
that
don't
makes
know
sense.
if
Because I haven't made it
ever
in like a year.
had it.
Well, Jay,
I need to.
I'll make you some, but I've already had it now, so you have to wait till
I need
next
to
time
be
I make
invited
it.
over for dinner. Just
Yeah.
call me Magi. So mine. I'm
Magi.
also mine. Yeah, Magi.
Oh my gosh.
I have a couple go-tos that I love, and they're pork related as well. So it'd be a toss-up between ribs or pulled pork, but I think I'd probably go with the pulled pork.
I've had Jay's pulled
which
pork.
you've had, yeah.
He invited me over. No,
I invited all
all of
you
us
three
over
was
for dinner. For
I did
pulled
not
pork.
eat it.
Yeah,
That's
that's
good.
right.
I had the poutine though,
That's
without
right.
any gravy on it because I don't
The
like
what?
gravy.
Say it again.
Poutine.
Okay, that was
What a
little-
weirdo.
yeah.
Who says it like that?
Who says
Anyway.
poutine? Anyways,
We're Canadian. This is a debate that could go on for a while.
well, yes, so as always, we do encourage you to read the stories for yourselves, get the whole picture of what's going on. Also, we encourage you to interact with our questions. Let us know
What meal?
what you would make. I would love to know what our listeners like to make and what they would make for people, and then
Invite
maybe,
us over for dinner,
yeah,
and
you can
feel free to
host
make whatever you want.
the Story Fulfilled podcast
There
for
you
dinner.
go. This is gonna make me really hungry answering all these questions. I'm already like thinking about
We
how
prom-
much
it's
I
the
want
last
pad thai.
food-related topic
for now.
for this episode. Anyway.
There you go.
Yeah. And today's story takes place in Matthew chapter 2.
Ooh.
Last week, we talked about the Caesars. We had Julius, Augustus, Nero,
Little
There's another food reference.
Salad.
We had salad. Yeah. And
I can't think of another word like the drink,
the drink.
the beverage,
Yeah.
clamato. Ooh.
The Caesars were Roman emperors during the time of Jesus and throughout the early church. But this week we're talking about another leader during the time of Jesus. And we're still in the New Testament, as we mentioned, Matthew chapter 2. Still in the first century, still in the region of Israel. Sorry to give away the geography there, Abby.
Not to spoil it.
But a little bit of background to this time period as we talk about Herod. To become the king of the Jews, Herod actually had to defeat the last of the Hasmonean kings. And the Hasmonean dynasty was set up after the defeat of the Seleucids by the Maccabees in the 2nd century BC. And I think we've talked a little bit about the Jewish revolt there, the Maccabean revolt it's called. And then there's Herod, and Herod's father was an official to one of the former Hasmonean leaders, John Hyrcanus.
Hyrcanus? I don't know.
Hyrcanus. Oh, that's probably better. That's probably
Hyrcanus. That's an interesting.
Yeah. Hyrcanus.
Hyrcanus. So why we bring that up is because you'll see that Herod the Great kind of switches sides. He's allegiance to Rome. He's allegiance to the Jews, and he goes back and forth basically throughout his whole life. But Herod was born in 70 BC. We're starting to blend the two together, so it's not as obvious which one it is. 70 BC. And Herod the Great was named governor of Judah around 40 BC. Like we said, he captured Jerusalem. He had to fight against the Hasmoneans. And that happened around 36 to 37 BC. And that's actually when he was named king of the Jews by the Roman Senate and by the Roman governors there. So Herod was king of the Jews, but he wasn't actually Jewish. Like Jay said, his father was an official to a Hasmonean king, but he was actually Idumean, which means they came from the region of the Edomites. And if you remember back throughout, actually the whole podcast, we've talked about the Edomites. They're kind of the descendants of Esau, and they're the foil of Israel throughout the whole time.
I think we've also made mention that continued on to the Amalekites, King Amalek, and Herod is believed to be a descendant of Amalek as well. So
there you go. Not just Esau, but also the next generation of Amalekites as well. Yeah.
King Saul's failure showing up.
And then Herod's dad was Idumean, and his mom was this Arabic princess, and she was also not Jewish. So Herod's heritage was not of Jewish descent, and so
that's a fun band name. I think.
Herod's heritage. That's great. So he wasn't Jewish, but his father had converted to Judaism, but he really doesn't follow the Jewish law.
Right.
So based on this, based on his father converting to Judaism, he publicly identified as Jewish. But again, he didn't really follow law. So Herod is famous for a few reasons, but one of them is his public building projects. He was Herod the Great, and he was great at building. Right. You'll recognize probably some of his projects. He built the port city of Caesarea Maritima, it's called, and that was named after Caesar. Again, we know he's like trying to convince Caesar that he's got to pay his allegiance. So he names a city after the Caesar. He also built a fortress called Masada, and there's actually a war that takes place in around 70 AD, and a bunch of zealot Jews hide in this fortress, that's the last stand of the Jewish zealots against Rome. He also made this man-made mountain with a castle on top, and that's called the Herodion, and it's right south of Jerusalem, I think. Named after himself, of course. But they basically had this little hill just south of Bethlehem, and he built it up, and it's in the history books, it basically says, Herod built this mountain and then built his castle on top.
Amazing.
And made it all luxurious for himself.
Yeah.
And then most famously, Herod also built up the Temple Mount. So the second temple that we've talked about a few weeks ago was built by Zerubbabel in roughly 500 BC. And Herod was like, well, this isn't enough. I'm going to make the Jews really happy. I'm going to build their temple even better.
Right. Little expansion
project. He doubled the size of the footprint of the temple.
Yeah.
He made it huge. He made it beautiful.
Added a Chick-fil-A.
No, he and a drive-through sacrifice. No. But he points. He had an app. No, he built the temple, and it was like just beautiful. You can look online of what Herod's temple would have looked like, and that now sits where the Temple Mount is in Jerusalem.
Right.
And that's the temple that Jesus would have gone to as well.
Yep.
When he was young, and then much later as well. Another way he tried to win over his Jewish subjects, not just building the temple, but he also lowered taxes for them, and he offered grain to them when there was a famine. And he also just encouraged economic growth throughout Israel, or throughout Judea, as it was called.
You
Nice
kind
guy.
of make him sound like this really
Yeah.
great guy.
Well,
I
that's
like
what I was
Herod.
going to say. You're probably thinking, this is the antagonist season. What the heck is Herod, this great guy, great builder, generous politician?
I see where he got his name. The Great.
Yeah, he's a great guy. But there's a few personal aspects to the man that make him not so great. So he was actually described as very ruthless to anybody who tried to steal his throne. And combine this with a growing paranoia in his old age, and you get a ruthless, violent, paranoid king of Judea.
Right.
And so he ends up killing his wife. He ends up killing his wife's parents and her brother, and he ends up killing 2 of his sons just because he thought that they were plotting against him. There was no actual plot that was actually planned out. It was just out of
That
suspect
we know of.
Yeah, he one
was
time.
like, my sons are sus.
Yeah, sons are sus, wife is sus, in-laws are sus. He ended up killing his brother-in-law at a pool party that he was having at his house. They don't actually know if he was killed by Herod, but he was found, in the pool the next morning after the party.
Okay.
So it's not a good person. I think there's a quote. I want to say it's from Caesar Augustus, and it was like, it's better to be Herod's pigs than his sons.
Wow.
Because, Jews don't eat pigs, right? They're not going to kill the pigs. But Herod is happily to
Dang.
kill his own descendants if they go against him. So, yeah, that's what makes him an antagonist for this season.
Okay, I got you now.
Okay, so as Jay explained before, these places are in Israel. And Herod was king in Judea, which was a region of the Roman Empire stretching from the Dead Sea in the south to the Jordan River on the east, to the Mediterranean on the west, and the Sea of Galilee in the north. So lots of space there.
Mm-hmm.
His palace was the Herodium, which is what Fletcher said before, and he spent the end of his life in Jericho, which was just north of the Dead Sea on the Jordan River.
Cool.
Yeah.
Alrighty, let's get into the story of Herod the Great. So in the Bible, we first hear of him, like Jay has said, in Matthew chapter 2. So it's basically the story of Jesus' birth. And it's Matthew chapter 2, verse 1. Now after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king. That's how the whole chapter starts out. Jesus is born in Bethlehem, and these wise men start coming to Jerusalem
Three
from
of them,
the
right?
east. 3 of them? We don't know. There's no actually 3.
3 gifts.
Three gifts, wise men. We don't know how many.
Don't know.
Anyway, so they're going to Jerusalem. They've seen this star in the sky, and they're going, where's this king that's supposed to be born? These king of the Jews is supposed to be born. And they go to Jerusalem to find out. And Herod kind of hears about this news.
What?
And he's like, whoa, I'm the king of the Jews. There's not going to be anybody. We know he's already paranoid. Things aren't going to go well for somebody looking for a new king.
No.
So Herod's like, okay, what are we going to do? So he gathers his high priests, he gathers his scribes, and he goes, look, where's this Messiah? Where's the king of the Jews supposed to be born? I got to figure this out. So they all get together and they quote him from the book of Micah. And they say, the Messiah is supposed to be born in Bethlehem. Go into the book of Micah. It talks about how the Messiah is going to be born in Bethlehem. So they tell Herod where he's supposed to be born. He then gets the wise men. He goes, oh, come on over for dinner. He's going to make some pad thai.
Yep.
Have him over and start talking. Herod, gets his charm out and he's like, oh, look, I'm looking for this king too. I want to worship him. So if you guys go find him, come back to me, tell him where he is so I can worship him too.
Yep.
And so the wise men are then sent out to go find the Messiah. As we know, this is a very famous nativity story. The wise men come, they bring their gold, frankincense, and myrrh and present it before Jesus in Bethlehem.
Yeah.
Or that's where he was born, and they go present it towards him.
Right.
That's the most famous story, obviously, in this story that we're telling. But after they're leaving, the wise men are warned in a dream that they shouldn't go back to Herod, and instead they should just go home. So they listen to this dream, and they go home a different way.
Sounds like the Holy Spirit to me.
It does, yeah. Next thing that happens, another message is sent in a dream. Joseph, the father of Jesus, now has a dream and is warned, you guys should leave Bethlehem. Herod is going to try to harm the Messiah. He's trying to hunt down the king.
Yeah.
And so they leave and they run over to Egypt. And so Herod, eventually figures out when they didn't come back that the wise men ditched him. They tricked him. They said, he's like, okay, I'm furious. I got to get rid of this king. There's no chance I'm letting this king overthrow me. We got to kill all the babies. He knew it was like around Bethlehem from the scriptures. He knew it was roughly 2 years that the Messiah would have been born. So he's like, look, every boy in Bethlehem is going to be put to death. Every boy under 2 is going to be put to death. And so that is put into place, and it actually happens. And luckily, Joseph is warned, or not luckily, by by an angel. They're warned and sent to Egypt to avoid this happening.
Yeah.
And then we know that they stay until Herod's death in Egypt. Right. And Herod actually, before he dies, he realizes nobody really cares about him and nobody's going to mourn his death.
Right.
So he gathers around a bunch of like high-ranking people from Jerusalem, and he says, look, when I die, I want you to kill these people. So everybody in Jerusalem is sad. Wow. Luckily, his son and wife his son and daughter don't let that happen.
That's amazing.
But that's the death of Herod the Great and the end of his reign.
My goodness.
Oof. That's not so great.
No.
Started out, he sounds good on paper, eh?
Yeah.
Well, he really does.
Yeah.
Such a great guy. And then not so much.
Murder.
Interesting. I think we've touched on this in season 1, potentially, but we see that Joseph flees to Egypt to save his family. And if you backtrack in the Bible to Genesis, you see that there's another Joseph that goes to Egypt and in doing so ends up saving his family. And so
this is your sign if your name is Joseph to go to Egypt.
That's right.
Cool. There you go.
Yeah.
Save your family.
Maybe pray about that.
If you get a dream from an angel that says go to Egypt, definitely do it.
Definitely go.
Yeah, I'm not an angel.
And I'm not named Joseph, so we'll be good for now.
We're all good.
I've heard or I've read of a lot of controversy surrounding, Herod never actually did this. There's no history behind Herod killing these babies in Bethlehem. And basically the solution to this is Bethlehem was a very, very small town. And the only person recording history at this time, his name is Josephus. And he's recording kind of the major events in the kingdom of Rome and in Judea. And if you look at the number of people in Bethlehem, it would have been probably not that I'm not diminishing the cruelty and the evil that Herod did, but it would have probably been somewhere around 40 children. Right. So it's not world-changing history, and it's not something that you'd go, oh, by the way, this happened, and it was a major event. It was probably a really small event that took place that Herod could have done pretty under the rug and gotten away with it.
And that's also kind of the point of the prophecy about Bethlehem in Micah, is that it's insignificant. Mm-hmm. It's not of much importance.
Like, what are the odds that the Messiah is going to be born in that tiny little town, right? Yeah. Absolutely. Speaking of prophecies, Micah had one about Jesus being born in Bethlehem, and that just comes to pass, first of all, because we talked about last week, the census that was called, and then that was also under the authority of Herod the Great. But a second prophecy, if you read Matthew 2, comes about, and it talks about the prophecy in Jeremiah, and it says, Rachel is weeping for her children, a little tongue twister, and she refused to be comforted because they are no more. And you think, well, what does Rachel have to do with this? If you remember back, that was Jacob's wife in Genesis. Right. But Rachel is actually buried in Bethlehem. And so even Matthew, the author, is like, well, look, this is the fulfillment of this prophecy in Jeremiah. Rachel in Bethlehem is weeping over the death of her children.
Exactly. We see this clinging to a kingdom from in Herod, and we see this self-interest. He's so focused on protecting his self-interest, which is wrapped up in his kingdom. And I think that we need to be aware of those temptations in our lives when we react to the things that are going on around us. Are we reacting because we are looking out for our self-interest, and are we then taking drastic, harsh, ungodly measures as a result, or behaving in certain ways because we are protecting our own self-interest? Mm-hmm. And I think, yeah.
No, that's a really, and you think, well, Herod, okay, he rebuilt the temple of God. He did that. When you think of who built the first temple is Solomon. Why did he build it? Because God told him to, and he wanted to please God. And then Zerubbabel and the people, why did they rebuild it? Because they wanted to worship God.
Yeah.
Herod rebuilt it. Oh, I'm going to appease the Jews. I'm going to make myself great.
Yeah.
And so everything he did in his life was either to appease people, to make himself look good.
Right.
And we'll see. He is the king of the Jews. And then the next king of the Jews, who of course is Jesus, and he is called that on his cross, he's called the king of the Jews. He does the opposite of the none of his actions are self-serving in any way.
And so why do we do the things that we do? Or do we do them because of conviction of the Holy Spirit and because we want to honor Jesus in our lives? Or are we doing them for the way that they boost our appearance and make us look like good Christians? And we can do lots of good Christian, you can't see me, but I'm air quoting, good Christian things and not even have an ounce of a relationship with Jesus. And that's a dangerous place to be.
Absolutely. I think we like just sidebarred Abby and answered the question before she could ask.
As I was trying to answer,
She's like, no, I got the answer. Give me a second.
So that kind of answered our final question, which was, how does this story work together to fulfill the rest of the story of God throughout the Bible?
So rewind like 2-3 minutes.
That's right.
And listen to it again. Yeah. And then you'll get caught in a loop because you will hear this section in 2-3 minutes again.
Yes.
That's right.
And then you can go back and listen again.
Right.
And again.
Tell us how many times you get stuck in this. No, I'm just
It's
joking.
like watching one of those videos on TikTok and you don't know when this starts
you
over again.
Can't figure out the infinite loop TikToks, and you're like, oh, wait.
And then it's got this caption, wait till the end.
Yeah, and they get you.
And then you get stuck.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Let's do it to them.
Well, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for listening.
Bye for now.